Hey guys, how's it going? Well, I have decided to finally start telling you a little bit about my story. I am a woman who is late diagnosed autism spectrum. My official diagnosis is pdd-nos. And yeah, I was diagnosed in my late 40s. I didn't know I had it all these years. So I shared about how I came to that awareness in the video called How This American Life Changed My Life. But I haven't really shared a whole lot about my life before diagnosis, so I will start to do that in a series of videos. So this first video, I'm going to talk to you kind of from birth to third grade or so, age 8. Give you a little bit of background. And, I just want to mention, one, that just because I tell you something doesn't mean I'm necessarily telling you because I think it's related to the autism or caused the autism or as a result of autism or anything like that. It's just to try and give you a little bit of background and maybe you'll see some similarities. And then the other thing is, obviously, I have a private life and there are things I don't want to share. So these are just some highlights and some of the things that I think are kind of significant. So anyway, to begin, I was born 3 weeks premature. It was under fairly traumatic circumstances. It was during the biggest snowstorm in my city's history ever. It was like the day after. There was like 5 feet of snow. And it was quite an ordeal to get me to the hospital. But or I should say to get my mom to the hospital, I was born in the hospital, thankfully. I was born small. I was like 5 pounds 9 ounces. My mom was not very healthy when she carried me. She was a smoker. She also had only gained like 15 pounds when she carried me. People didn't even know she was pregnant. So, yeah, she said that when she was carrying me that there were times that, she just didn't feel any movement and she thought like maybe I had died. And she said that she would go in a hot bath and she would just put like a hot washcloth on her stomach and then like I would start to kick a little and then she'd feel better. Early on I started having like a lot of ear infections and I actually still have some like issues with this right ear. It's like whenever the doctors look at it, like they always see that there's a lot of scarring. And there's just a little bit of hearing issue in that ear. And also I now have a chronic mastoid infection in that ear, which I think I've had for like maybe 18 years. And the mastoid's a bone right behind the ear, and it's like kind of like Swiss cheese. And the little pockets there's no air in there, so it's hard to really attack bacteria in that kind of a bone. I have read about the connection between ear infections and impact on sensory processing. If you're interested, that can be something you can look into. The book that was really helpful to me was Too Loud, Too Bright, Too Fast, Too Tight. I think that's a good one. I don't have a lot of memories or knowledge about like age 1 to when I went to kindergarten. What I do know is that, it was a traumatic household. My father's a recovering alcoholic who was not recovering at that time, and my mom had her issues as well, and usually the two kind of find each other, right? So and I have an older sister who's got her her issues as well, and it was tough. There was there was a lot of stuff which I don't need to go into. You can certainly imagine. I was really like a very kind of sweet, sensitive child, and I think that really affected me a lot. Yeah, I know it did. So let's see, I will fast forward to like kindergarten. So when I went to kindergarten, I went in the morning session, and my mom said that I came home and I was so excited, and I was like, oh my God, can I go in the afternoon too? I think I loved learning, and also like the art stuff, all that. It felt like play to me. Really liked it. And the other thing that she said was that the day I came home from kindergarten, that I picked up a book and started reading it out loud. She said that it was kind of like, apparently I'd known all along how to read, or at some point I figured it out just from being read to. And she's like, oh, it was like you said, oh, well, I went to school, now I can read, you know? And that's what's called hyperlexia. That some people with autism have that they pick up, you know, reading without being taught. So yeah, I definitely had that. And let's see. So even though, you know, my home life was definitely stressful and, you know, troubled, school was always a really good place. For the most part, a really positive thing for me. I did really well in school. I loved learning. I tested really high in a lot of areas. Like, you know how you get those standardized tests? I was always like several grades advanced, like anywhere from like maybe 1 grade advanced in something to like 3 grades advanced. I particularly did well in like numerical things, you know, like math related. And I think I did really well in like vocabulary and verbal. Maybe not as well in like reading comprehension, but still above average. Yeah, it's interesting because my grades were not totally reflective of this. I mean, I had good grades. I was always like in the honor roll and stuff. But you'd think for someone that smart, I'd be having straight A's every quarter, right? But I wasn't. There were definitely like B's in there. And what's really interesting is when I was pulling together my old report cards for the woman who did my Asperger's testing, I was looking at it again, and I thought it was really interesting that it was always the first quarter of every new school year that I would get like a lot of B's. And I think it's because a lot of us have trouble with change. One, you know, like I was probably coming from kind of summer mode and changing into school mode again, but then also it's like you have new teachers, you have, you know, new classmates and stuff. So I suspect maybe that might have been what was going on. Yeah, I was in like a lot of gifted programs and stuff. I was also very creative. Like even in kindergarten, the teacher had written something like, it's just so fun to watch her work with art supplies. And then in 3rd grade, you know, the teacher like commented on my creative writing. So I had a very strong creative streak for sure. Yeah, and yet at the same time, you know, I was really struggling, I would say, emotionally. I had a lot of challenges, you know, and it's hard to know exactly what's from what. One of the things I struggled with was I hated having attention on me. I was, for example, in 2nd grade, I was chosen to be in a spelling bee, and I had to get up in front of like the whole gymnasium, and it was terrible, and I ended up like not getting the word right, and then they made you sit up there, and I was just sick to my stomach, and I said, I'm never doing this again. I just couldn't stand it. I remember one year I won like this chief for a day thing with a local fire station, and like I did not want to go, where you'd have like all this attention on you and pictures and stuff. I have several situations like that where I was like terrified to have attention. And it could also be like even one-on-one, like if a little boy liked me, and I hated that feeling, you know. And the other area of my life was like kind of with like the physical activity. There are some people that don't have like the motor challenges that other autistics do, and that's me. I didn't have those issues growing up. I was very active, actually, and my dad was an athlete, so he was a big proponent of getting us involved in things. We did roller skating. I was like in acrobatic classes. Sometimes I was in dance classes, tennis. One year I took baton because I had a babysitter who twirled a baton, and I wanted to learn that. So I just really enjoyed that stuff. And I think in retrospect, some of that was kind of like also for me sensory seeking behavior. Yeah, I just needed a lot of that stimulation. So let's see. I think around 2nd grade, I was treated for a speech impediment at school, which I've also heard is not that uncommon. I had trouble pronouncing my S's, my CH's, my SH's, and my J's. And I know that I can hear it. I don't know if other people hear it, but I still hear it, you know, like when I watch my videos, that it's not as clear as it could be. So I had to go like a couple times a week during school and be treated for that. And then also I had something which I now know what is called synesthesia. So that's also something that some people with autism have, where like your sensors are sort of crossed. So you might see colors associated with music, or you might taste colors. In my case, it wasn't super severe, but for me, it's like I associate colors with certain letters, or I guess maybe I should say letters with certain colors. So like, for example, an R for me is red, an S is blue. It's just always been that way, always will be. I don't actually see those colors. And maybe I did when I was younger, but to me, that's just what it is. An R is red, you know? And it's interesting because there's certain letters that I don't have a very strong connection to a color. It's sort of vague, you know? I'm like, I think that one's gray. And then I had this really weird thing, which I've never heard anyone else talk about, but I remember, not super clearly, but I do remember that for a while, I don't know if it was either when I would speak or when I would hear people talking, I would see the actual words. And then I would also see the consonants in black and the vowels in red. Now, this is a problem, you know, so I guess I've like literally like forced myself to stop doing that somehow. I was still having some health issues up until this point. Like, I was getting sick fairly often, and like my parents had told me I was complaining of stomach issues. I remember having to drink like all that chalky stuff. I don't really think we ever figured out exactly what was going on. But, you know, it's hard to know. Like, so many of us have GI issues, and I now have GI issues for sure. Like, I have several, like, issues with digestion and bacteria and things like that. So that might have been an early sign of, like, the GI issues, or could have been stress-related, or some combination thereof, you know, who knows. And then I also was getting bladder infections. And so again, it was just that really like weak immune system between the ear infections and getting sick, and then the stomach, and then bladder infections, and yeah, it was not fun. Even though like I was really intellectually advanced, I struggled in other ways. Like, I remember one time I was in first grade, and the teacher asked me to like take something to the main office, and I was terrified, and I got like severe anxiety, and maybe I didn't know exactly where it was, or I don't know if I didn't know where it was, or if I just had anxiety or what. I mean, I was a little kid, so it was kind of, I don't know if that was at all related to the autism, or just because I was like 6 years old, for God's sake. Yeah, I remember being like really petrified to like go back and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm scared, or whatever. I was very emotionally sensitive, and I would get upset very easily. I'd feel emotions very intensely. And that is actually a quote from my dad. He said to me once, as I was when I was an adult, he said, "You feel things very intensely." And that's true. And, I talked about some of that in my Sixth Sense video. I was very, very sensitive to things going on around me. I was not oversensitive from the perspective of I was feeling things that weren't there. I was feeling things, and I was in a traumatic household, and I was sensitive. Unfortunately, I was called a baby, and I was really kind of put down for that, I was not like a very kind of, gosh, in some ways I guess I was kind of a strong personality when it would come to like maybe things like play. Like, I could definitely be like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. But in certain situations, I was very timid and kind of scared and shy. I got scared a lot at night, and I would ask my mom to come sleep with me. And some of that could have been sensory processing. I've read about that, like kids having a fear of the dark, that being part of the sensory processing. I loved animals, and I loved being out in nature. Oh my God. I begged and begged and begged for a dog when I was like 8 years old, and finally got one. And then I used to love to be out climbing trees and things like that. Like, we had some areas, like some fields and stuff near where I lived. And so like a friend and I would go and like grab a piece of wood and a nail and hammer and like nail it into like a tree, like climb up a tree and like nail it in there so we'd have like a little like fort area. I love to climb trees. Oh my God. Love to do like swing set, you know, hang upside down and all sorts of things. You know, I'm really, really lucky in that I did have school as a reprieve. You know, with my family life being so stressful, you know, I am so grateful that I wasn't bullied. You know, I've had some incidents that were less than ideal, for sure. You know, I was naive, and there are people that definitely, you know, take advantage of that. But overall, it was fun. I felt like really good with my classmates. I was kind of like, how do you want to put it? Like the lover of humanity. Like I really didn't like, you know, necessarily want to exclude anybody, or, you know, if there's somebody who was sort of the underdog, I really felt for them and I'd want to stick up for them or include them. So I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I was having sensory processing issues for sure, and for me it was with the sounds, being, you know, very, very sensitive to noises. And I think I was like also like hypotactile in that I was always wanting like deep pressure. You know, I would say, Mom, you know, massage my neck, and she'd rub and rub and rub, and I'd say deeper or harder. You know, like I always wanted that kind of deep pressure and touch. And like I mentioned with the sports and stuff, I think I was always like looking for that. I think it's called like proprioception, right? You know, where that sort of just kind of stimulation, you know, in terms of like where you are in space and things like that. Oh, and then, you know, I shared about some of my special interests in my other video, so you can watch that one. But like, I might spend an afternoon and just like color code things or organize things, I guess. And I love to read. I was big into like Nancy Drew, big time. And what I would do is like there were certain ones that I just loved, and so I would like repeat those frequently. Other ones I just didn't care for, but I would like reread the ones I liked. And I'm kind of like that now, like, but I'm more into film. I don't read as much. I was also into like creative play, like to like put on plays, and I would say, okay, you be this character and I'll be this character, and we'd have music and all sorts of things. I was definitely very like vibrant and creative child, I guess. Yeah, so I guess it gives you a little bit of history about the kind of early years, and gosh, like I said, there's no way I can include everything, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of sense, and I will record later and share some of the rest of my childhood as undiagnosed Aspie.